I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday, April 11th. We are just a couple weeks away now from the start of the NFL Draft, so we will continue by talking about potential rookie wide receivers. But before we get to that, Dennis, our old friend Tyreek Hill is at it again. We mentioned when we talked about dynasty rankings that he was a tough one to rank because of the volatility, not only of potential on-field performance and whether he's happy with his team, but now an off-field situation rearing its ugly head again. This time his wife filing for divorce after a domestic violence incident. This can't have you feeling too good about his 2025 prospects.
You know, it feels like we're barreling towards the commissioner's exempt list for Tyreek Hill. I'm sure they'll have to do their investigation and see what comes out. You know, was there a 911 call? Was it just a after the fact complaint? I haven't seen a ton of details about it, primarily because between work and coaching baseball, I've had my plate full this week. And so I'm just I'm going to use this show to get caught up on some of this here news. It's, you know, what is Tyreek? Is he 30, 31, 29?
I think he's 30. I'll have to look.
So, you know, he's getting to that age where you probably...
He's 31.
So, you know, you probably wanted to start getting out of the Tyreek Hill business a year ago, you know, but it's hard when you know how dynamic he is. And while he's not big, there's two schools of thoughts on receivers. One is that the smaller receivers, they can be susceptible to injuries because they're smaller. But Tyreek Hill is kind of a, you know, he's a small, short receiver. He's not a little receiver. He's kind of rocked up pretty good. And he does a pretty good job of avoiding contact. He gets out of bounds a lot. He's fast and he's super twitchy, avoids getting tackled. So when you got a player like that, you can kind of justify keeping him around, especially when you've seen him really click in a particular offense. But now we're at that point where we're starting to see, dare I say, a little bit of the Antonio Brown off-field things going on upstairs. Maybe he has taken a few too many hits and he's starting to make some questionable decisions off the field. Not that he, you know, has a long, not questionable decisions off the field. But we'll have to see how things shake out. I think depending on your risk tolerance, you might be looking for an opportunity to sell low. And I know we talk in Dynasty all the time. You want to buy low, sell high. But sometimes you just got to suck it up and say, I'm done being in business with this cat. I'm going to take what I can get.
So we know his wife filed for divorce, so that will go forward. The police were called and responded to an incident on Monday. They did not charge him or arrest him, but there are some details that don't seem too good. And I would think since this isn't his first run-in with these kind of things that the NFL will probably look unkindly on that. I don't know if I feel like exempt list, but I wouldn't be surprised to see 4 to 6 games. Miami has some decisions to make themselves. Obviously he started last season with the being detained and nearly arrested on his way to opening week game, and there was a lot of back and forth about that. That wasn't a great look. I'm kind of like you. I don't know if I have any shares of him. I don't think I do, but I would be trying to move on. The question is, what do you think you can get for him? Somebody asked that in one of our Discord, and I said I think the most optimistic thing I would hope for is a second.
Yeah, because of his reputation, you might be able to get something a little higher. Like, I could see if I'm sitting, if I'm a dynasty manager and I'm sitting at 110, 111, 112, and I've got a pretty good team, maybe I'm looking for a lottery piece to get me over the top, and I'm willing to take a shot. I'd trade the 110, 111, 112 for Tyreek Hill straight up. It's a risk reward situation, and he may not play again, but like, if I'm in a situation where I'm like, I've got a hole in my lineup, and if I can get somebody like peak Tyreek, I can compete. I don't think I'd trade that late first for him. But if I can have Tyreek be one of 4 or 5 receivers that I can play on any given week, and I've got decent running backs, and so if he misses 4 games or 6 games, or hell, even 8 games, I can probably absorb it. Then I think trading that late first for him is a risk worth taking. But I think you're going to end up, like you said, buyers are going to be saying, by and large, the risk isn't worth it to me. I'll give you a late second, but not a late first.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a third, because you and I were both already having him in kind of wide receiver 3 range. I think you had him in low end wide receiver 3 range before this. So.
For Dynasty, and a lot of that was, age related. Let me see.
Yeah.
I had him at wide receiver 30.
Yeah, so
you had him at 20.
Yeah, I mean, the explosive potential is there. I would probably have him below where you had him when I update, because now you're adding some weird legal shenanigans. And it was not too long, too, after we did our rankings that he posted that, peace sign, like he wanted to leave again, which that's the other thing, like constantly seems to be at war with his team. And I'm getting like some real strong Antonio Brown vibes of late, which is not, not Antonio Brown mid-career where he was like nothing but impeccable for the Steelers, but Antonio Brown on the Buccaneers kind of vibe. Maybe it's just because it starts by saying a Florida man, but I don't know. Other wide receiver news: Alan Lazard took a pay cut to stay with the Jets. Would probably currently be considered their wide receiver 2, looking at that depth chart. I don't know that this moves the needle much for me. It's not surprising he'd take a pay cut because it has been 2 tumultuously unproductive years for him there. I'm still not wild about making a point to roster him. I don't know if that does some more for you.
Is it a point per block league? I mean, I think he took a pay cut with the hopes of being able to stay on the team. And it's probably one of those deals where it's like, hey, take this pay cut, because if you don't, we're definitely going to cut you. But if you make it easier and cheaper for us to cut you later, maybe you'll get a little something out of it, and maybe you'll stand a chance.
Well, I mean, he's only competing right now with Tyler Johnson, who's at best a journeyman. Josh Reynolds, who would probably be the other guy I'd consider that is in the mix for wide receiver 2 right now. Xavier Gipson and Malachi Corley, who, we've had some hopes for at times, but haven't seen them a lot. I, though, would not be shocked to see the Jets. In fact, I'd be shocked if the Jets didn't take a wide receiver and or tight end in the draft and boost. Otherwise, they're kind of screwing Justin Fields the same way the early version of the Jets did.
Right. Yeah, the hard part is that it's not a super great wide receiver class. So if you're going to take one, you don't want to, it's not a class where you're going to gamble on a third or fourth round wide receiver and hope they can step into your starting lineup. And do the Jets have enough good players at other positions that they can, justify using a second round pick on a wide receiver? I don't know. Maybe Tyler Warren's their pick at 7, and they're just like, hey, or if Ashton Genty makes it to 7, the Bears want to come up to 7, and they can go back to 10 and get Warren at 10.
Yeah, I have long thought Warren a good potential landing spot is the Jets, so they may go tight end, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them take a receiver in the third or the fourth round. Doesn't mean it can't. Their room's not incredible. I mean, Josh Reynolds washed out of a
Amari Cooper's still out there.
That's true. Keenan Allen's still out there too. There are some veteran guys they could be going to grab. I just think they got to do something there. Some interesting quarterback injury news. First, it came out that Deshaun Watson, despite all the comments made last week by his owner in the Browns, says all the negativity is fueling his furious comeback regime that he still plans to play this season. Meanwhile, Derek Carr now has a shoulder injury, they said, that could potentially threaten his ability to play in the 2025 season. He's currently considering whether to undergo shoulder surgery. I have to say I was a little taken aback by the Derek Carr news.
Yeah, it was pretty surprising. But I mean, the dude's getting older. It's, how'd he hurt it? Like, that's the story I want to know. And what did he do?
He had the injury to end last season. That's why he missed the games at the end of the season.
Right, but is it the same injury? Like, the way it read was like it's a new injury.
I assume it's the same injury that maybe just isn't healing, but that does explain the Saints have been one of the teams that almost every other day it talks about them having brought in another rookie quarterback, which I thought they would probably take a quarterback somewhere anyway because they need to start looking toward the future, but that future may be a little more immediate. The Saints are high enough up that Jackson Dart in the first round would be plausible.
So the Saints, and it might have been TJ Blackgrove or something. I forget the Twitter name. It's one of the bloggers down there. Basically said that, in their opinion, the Saints have been in cap hell for so long that they shouldn't waste a pick this year on a quarterback. They should start Spencer Rattler and roll through the season, take their lumps, let their salary cap get, or, they're going to end up stinking. And who knows, maybe then they end up with the 101 and Arch Manning says, you know what? NIL money is nice, but my grandpa was a Saint. I'm going to be a Saint too. You never want to think teams are tanking, but some teams are tanking. That being said, I just, it feels like Kellen Moore is his situation is getting worse and worse each day. It's kind of what it feels like. I think, if we hear that Carr is going to be out extended deep into the season, I would expect the next blurb about the Saints to be Alvin Kamara requesting a trade.
I was looking to see what their, multi-year contract situation is, and honestly, it doesn't look like it would get appreciably better for 2026. They'd still have to eat a ton of dead cap apparently on Derek Carr.
They just restructured him and moved a bunch of it, moved around this year, and it did put some in.
I know. I'm looking at Spot Track, and it says his dead cap figure in 26 now is 69,207,000.
Nice.
And Alvin Kamara next year dead cap is 18.6 million, and Chris Olave is a free agent. So honestly, the whole ride it out one more year and you fix cap hell is not seeming plausible at this point in time. That may be riding it out.
Like, if I get it, you're still going to be on the hook for him next year. But if the rookie quarterback class, you're a campus to Canton guy. What are they saying about the 2026 rookie class?
I think a lot of it will have to do. I mean, there's no guarantee that Arch Manning comes out. That's the other thing. And if we're being honest, this is not the best time of year to be able to tell what a quarterback class is going to be, because we
don't know who's starting.
Yeah, and you don't know who is going to establish themselves almost every year. I mean, look, Jaden Daniels came out of not being expected to be number 2 and might have been the best quarterback taken in that class. Cam Ward wasn't who people thought was going to be number 1 at this time last year. And Arch Manning could fall off the shelf, could decide to stay in college. I mean, there's a whole lot of...
The Saints need to hit on a quarterback like Dallas did with Dak Prescott, or Seattle did with Russ Wilson. They need one of these 4th or 5th rounders to just hit and be the guy and just step up. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, we thought he could develop, but we didn't think it would happen this quickly.
And from that standpoint, I almost think it's maybe makes more sense to just see what you can get, because I mean, if you take a quarterback in the first round and then you potentially have them on 4 or 5 years of a lower contract number, and that would be enough to ride out some of these deals or kill through some of these deals. And having your team be upside down in the cap with the right rookie quarterback doesn't preclude you from competing, because look at Denver. I thought they were going to be a dumpster fire, which is why I didn't want them to take a quarterback last year. And they were a dumpster fire in terms of the salary cap situation, but they made enough smart picks and got a good enough quarterback in there that they were able to make the playoffs. And now, as they're emerging from salary cap purgatory and draft pick purgatory, they already have good pieces in place, and you can start to get excited. The Saints, there was nothing I saw from Rattler's experience on the field last year that would have me excited that he's the answer. So
he was a guy that needed to sit all year, in my opinion, and being forced to play. The game, I don't think had slowed down for him. And he just, while he's got some tools, he's got a big arm and whatnot, he clearly wasn't ready. And so now he's going to, now he has to fight the perception battle if he wants to become a starting quarterback. And, we see often that a mid-round pick, when they come in and they don't play great, they never really get another shot.
So speaking of quarterbacks, a couple other guys that signed, Joe Flacco back to the Browns on a 1-year deal, Drew Lock back to the Seahawks. Lock, I would assume, will be the backup to Darnold. Really probably just makes us feel bad for Sam Howell. But Joe Flacco, I mean, could be the starter.
QB1.
Very, very well could be QB1, though.
I mean, maybe he's a great mentor for Kenny Pickett. I don't know. I'm not overly concerned with Deshaun Watson and his I'm coming back. I think even if he gets even if he's achieves the physical ability to come back, it ain't going to be in Cleveland.
Yeah, I don't think they really want to see him on the field. So, last bit of news: we started with some police activity. We're going to end with some police activity, and that is Isaiah Bond, one of the young wide receivers who is hoping to hear his name called in 2 weeks, and who we will be talking about today, was picked up on, I believe it was on a warrant. So it's not usually great if you have legal trouble before you're even in. And the fact that he was arrested on a sexual assault charge also seems kind of alarming. What do you make of this as we move toward the draft?
Well, if he was a legitimate 4-2-1 guy, maybe he could have outran this, but I agree with you. It's not a good look. It's definitely going to be problematic. We saw probably the most recent example that we saw was Matt Ariza, and I get it. He's a punter, and it's like, oh, but he was a phenomenal punter in college, and he was a draftable punter.
Well, he had already been drafted,
right? And so, but the info was out there before the draft, I think, and so
no, I'm pretty sure it came out after because he got released immediately upon.
Gotcha. So that, and that don't sexually assault people. How fucking hard is it?
Well, and to be fair, here is the statement that he released regarding the accusation made against me. I would appreciate the time and opportunity to defend myself and prove the claims made patently false. I am in full cooperation with the authorities and will remain a willing and active participant in their investigation. Unfortunately, claims like these prove to be harmful to all involved, absent a full review. I kindly request that everyone reserve judgment until the authorities provide a complete report based on truth and evidence. Obviously was probably written by his agents who are crying somewhere drinking themselves to sleep tonight, but it is a fair point. Matt Ariza is a great example in that he got released and it ultimately, that case got dismissed, or his involvement in it got dismissed, and he had to spend time putting himself back together. I mean, it could easily go the other way, but I would wager this hurts the round somebody takes a shot on Bond.
Yeah. The optics are problematic, and we could see him. What was he? Probably second or third, maybe round pick prior to this. I'd expect he's going to drop probably to day 3, and as news comes out, because we got just 2 weeks till the draft.
Yeah, literally 2 weeks from today, we'll be recapping the first round.
If anything, if any news, additional news comes out that is not supportive of his well-crafted agent statement there, he could drop completely out of the draft, because teams are gonna, they don't want to deal with the bad press if it ends up being true, or if it ends up being, maybe not true to the extent that, that it was that he committed like rape, but more that he was involved in something that, led to somebody being assaulted in some way. I don't know. I could see it dropping anywhere to day 3 to completely out of the draft.
Well, that's a good segue. If as good a segue as there can be with a sexual assault arrest, to talk about the rookie wide receivers. It's the last of the 4 position groups we have to look at for the draft. So why don't you kick us off with your top tier of rookie receivers?
So my top tier, and I'm going to go, I feel like I'm going out on a limb. I've got Travis Hunter at 1 and Ted McMillan at 2, and I put them both in the same tier. Hunter, 6'1", 188 pounds. He's a little bit light. And the more I look at things, the harder it is for me to believe that in a league that has a premium on offense, that a team is going to draft him and make him primarily a defensive player. Will he play both ways? Probably. I expect that's going to be the way that it goes. Will he be primarily a offensive player? Yes. And I think he has the talent and ability to be the wide receiver one. He's a different receiver than Tet McMillan, but he's got a good catch radius and vertical leap. He can dominate on jump balls because of his athleticism. He's got soccer stamina from playing both ways, and I think that's going to be something that that gives defenses problems going into the league. He's really fast, but he's got good tempo. He can change and vary his route speeds to create the ability to get open. He's got exceptionally good focus. I mean, he was one of the top recruits in the nation and could have went to virtually any of the blue blood football schools. And it kind of shook recruiting when he said, no, I'm going to go to Jackson and play for Deion Sanders. He's got exceptionally good catch strength. He's got sudden hands. Like he can wait. He waits till the last minute, doesn't tip off the defenders when he's running routes. And at any given moment, because of his shiftiness and his flat out speed, he can take any ball, long or short, all the way to the house. It just, as I've watched this play out, and I've tried to determine, like, where am I going to draft him in my rookie drafts? Where am I going to place him? How risk averse am I going to have to be to not make him a top 3 pick? And I'm getting more and more, unless he's drafted by somebody and they call him out. We're drafting, Roger Goodell steps up and, so-and-so drafting defensive back Travis Hunter, and then all the post-game or all the post-draft press and all that team talks about is him as a defensive back, then maybe I'm going to be shook a little bit. But until something like that happens, I think that he's going to be a receiver. Would I like him better if he was 198 pounds instead of 188 pounds? Yeah, but he's built a little bit. He's like a beefy Devonta Smith. He's got that 6'1" height.
Smith has done well.
He has. He can, if press coverage, if you've got a cornerback that's big, gets up on the line, that can get him, sometimes knock him off his route because he is a little bit light. He's going to have to put some effort. There are times in college where he didn't really have to put the effort in that he will in the NFL to beat cornerbacks. And so he's going to have to make sure that he's not on cruise control. But yeah, at 6 foot, 188 pounds, I think Travis Hunter is a bona fide star in the making. I think he's one of those guys a la CeeDee Lamb, where if a team is down late in the game, you'll see him drop back and take punts. I think he's going to get it. Like, he's not going to do it a lot, but like Tyreek Hill, there's going to be some teams going to draft him. And because of his all-around ability, elusiveness, and speed, he's going to be able to convince them, look, I'm going to give us a shot if you just let me do this once in a while. He's going to make some plays on defense, but I don't expect him to play. I think his snap share at best will be 80-20, 80% offense, 20% defense. And I feel like that's generous on defense.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same top 2 as you, and I think that certainly Hunter is working his way up there. He should be no worse than the top 5 pick. I think it really depends on how you feel about Ward, Warren, and Hampton, and your needs where you might take him. But I do have McMillan as wide receiver 1, but I think both you and I feel like even if your quarterback situation isn't great, the value just isn't in one of the quarterbacks. And if if a quarterback even in Superflex didn't go till pick 4, 5, or 6, I wouldn't be shocked. And seeing Hunter go up there, I wouldn't be shocked. I think when we do our 1 QB mock in a couple of weeks, that I will be surprised, in fact, if Hunter doesn't go top 3, because it does seem more and more like teams are locking in on him as a receiver. I think his pendulum has swung a lot from where we were talking about this in February, where there was a lot of trepidation that he was more interested in defense because he went with the cornerbacks in the combine and everything like that. But I'm with you. It seems more like he's swinging back toward receiver. And there's a reason he won the Heisman Trophy. So, and it's not just because he was a good corner.
With you, I was with you. Ted McMillan was literally my wide receiver 1 until I put this list together. And as I was tearing, I'm like, you know what? I'm going.
Well, and I think you and I have the same kind of top 5. We have a slightly different order. I have Burden, Emeka Ibuka, and Matthew Golden 3, 4, 5, and you have Ibuka, Burden, and Golden as your 3, 4, 5. But to me, it seems like to you there's kind of there's those 2 possibly elite special talents, 3 good receivers, and then to me there is kind of a big gap.
Yeah, like I only in my top 12, I only have 3 tiers. So there's the tier of 2, a tier of 3, and a tier of the rest.
And then just tiers of everyone else.
Yeah. No, I like McMillan. So big catch radius, former volleyball player. He can get up and leap 6'4", 219. Made a ton of highlight reel touchdown catches, and just he does a lot of things really well. And being team big wide receiver, I surprised myself putting Hunter above him, but he's a good route runner. He can kind of pick up the space in the zone, find where he needs to go. He is good at, kind of sensing where coverage is at. And he's got really good body control from that basket or that volleyball history. He's able, when he goes up and gets the ball, he doesn't miss the high point very often. He's really spot on with that. But he doesn't, his weaknesses are a little bit. He can be altered off the line. His release can be hampered a little bit in press coverage. Sometimes like I talked a little bit about Travis Hunter, because of his speed, he's really good at being able to vary the speed of his routes to help create some space. McMillan doesn't quite have that same ability, so sometimes his routes will lack a little bit of urgency. He doesn't track the deep ball like Emeka Ibuka, who's my number 3, is a former baseball outfielder and probably one of the best deep ball trackers coming out in this year's draft. But I think Ibuka, with his history of being in the slot and probably being, I don't know if pigeonholed is too strong a word, but he's had so much success there. He feels a little bit more like an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of receiver coming out of Ohio State. But I really like Ted McMillan as a receiver. I think he's going to go somewhere. I think his floor could be Cortland Sutton. I think that's a really good comp for him. So I'm just kind of waiting to see like who goes ahead. Early in the mock draft season, the NFL mock draft season, we were seeing McMillan drafted early. We were seeing him go to the Raiders. I think we saw him go to the Jets some. Lately, he's dropped back into the teens. A lot more of the mock drafters are kind of backing off him some. So it'll be interesting to see where he actually gets drafted.
Yeah, I have no doubt Travis Hunter will be drafted ahead of him. I think Hunter's going to end up going it seems like we're narrowing down to
It's going number 2 to Cleveland.
number 2 to Cleveland, and then taking Joe Flacco makes me feel like that's even more the case. How about that next group of 3 for you?
So I've got Ibuka at 3, Burden at 4, and Matthew Golden at 5. I like Ibuka, 6'1", 202. Like I mentioned a moment ago, excellent ball tracker on the deep ball. Very good against zone. We've seen him have just some monster games. He seems like he's one of those guys that seems to be always open, a little bit like a fast Keenan Allen. And I think the Amon-Ra St. Brown comp is pretty spot on for what he's going to bring to the NFL. He's got the ability. His speed can be a little bit surprising. He isn't fast early in his routes, but he does have some build-up speed. And so that can sort of surprise people and create some space. He's already working 2 feet in at the boundaries. He's been doing that all through college. And he's got a really good stiff arm, so he can kind of keep when he's good after the catch, and he's able to he's strong enough to fight some people off. Because he's not as quick in the first 10 yards, he kind of appears like his speed is kind of average, but I think he's plenty fast enough. And I like, I've seen a ton of Emeka Egbuka, a lot of comps over my shoulder here. Jackson Smith-Njigba, they're, basically Egbuka was Smith-Njigba's successor at Ohio State at wide receiver U there. Luther Burden, almost the same size as Emeka Egbuka, 6 foot, 206. He does have that early acceleration that Egbuka doesn't, so he's a little bit better with the top end speed than Egbuka. Great playmaker, adjust to deep balls, good. You can tell he may not have played as much baseball as Egbuka, but you can tell he did play baseball the way he can track the ball in the air. Another guy with good hands, late at the pass, plucks the throws. So he does a lot of things you like to see. But he gets a little bit lazy, doesn't always finish his routes cleanly, can get a little distracted in traffic, leading to some drops. Probably the biggest knock on Luther Burden is that 75% of his career catches were targets inside of 10 yards per Pro Football Focus. And so we find a lot of the knock on him as well. He's got that speed, but they didn't use it in college very effectively. Is that something that's going to translate in the NFL? Will an NFL coach be able to bring that out and use it and make him a more effective downfield weapon? Definitely has talent. I think top 5 wide receiver in the class is. I don't think you're going to get a ton of arguments. Matthew Golden, just slightly undersized, 5'11", 191. While Isaiah Bond was doing all the I'm going to beat Xavier Worthy's 40 time, Matthew Golden actually went out and ran in the 4.3s to not a lot of fanfare. He tends to be a guy that rises to the occasion, makes plays in big games. Got good speed, can get past corners on 9 routes. He is another guy, because of that speed, he's able to alter his route tempo very well, much like Travis Hunter. He's got really nice body control, but he can be a little bit unfocused sometimes, leading to drops. And that's something that Xavier Worthy had the same issue coming out of Texas. We didn't see a lot of it last year in Worthy's rookie season. He played really, really well. So if he can kind of put that behind him, make that a priority in his development through rookie camp, going into his rookie season. I think that Matthew Golden has the opportunity to really step up because of his speed. Well, he's not a big wide receiver at 5'11", 191. If he can put on another 5 or 6 or 7 pounds, he could probably play outside.
I think we talked about, it's kind of a big flat group. There are those 5 that are interesting. Those are probably the only 5 I would necessarily bet on getting drafted in the top 3 rounds of the draft, the actual NFL draft. There probably will be some others, and I think that's where, for me, that group beyond the top 5, figuring out exactly where I would put them all is probably going to come down to a little bit of seeing where they end up going in the draft, especially with things like Isaiah Bond's arrest. Of those next group, the ones that I currently liked the best, Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris, and Alec Eomayor, who you also have kind of as that next group. But are there, guys in the 6 to 12 to 15 range that you're excited about, or that you think might end up being good returns?
Excited. I don't know if that's the word I'd use. When you get past, pick 16, pick 18, the return is really spotty. In general, second round picks don't have a super high hit rate. Second round fantasy picks, rookie picks, third round picks are, it drops off huge from second round. Fourth round picks, it's like they're like a needle in a haystack. And anybody that tells you they're great at targeting fourth round rookie draft picks just doesn't understand what luck is. But, Trey Harris, he's got NFL size and speed at 6'2", 205. He can get past defensive backs. He's a long strider. He does a good job changing speeds and can set up his breaks. He is big enough that when contact is made after the catch, he can, move the defensive back, pick up a couple extra yards. He's a good jumper, can get up in the air. He had a ton of hitches and screen passes, and that, so much like Luther Burden, you kind of find guys that are making their bread and butter in some, schemed up kind of simple routes that can create some a little bit of a mirage when it comes to their production. He doesn't have the best hands. He tends to let the ball get into his body a little bit, causing him to drop the ball a little bit. But he is a guy that, late second, when we're out of running backs and tight ends, and Lord knows quarterbacks will be out of ones we want to draft in the late second, he's probably a guy that I'm going to be looking at. Jaden Higgins is another guy. I've seen probably Higgins and Eomayor and Harris. Analysts out there, draft analysts, kind of have their favorite amongst these guys that they're putting into day 2, later in day 2, and so it just kind of varies at who you follow. You'll see if you read a lot of mock drafts right now, you'll end up seeing different analysts putting different one of these 3 as their top pick out of these 3, and it's much like you said, draft capital is going to be really what moves these second 6, 7, 8 receivers around. Higgins is a smooth strider. He can track deep balls well. He's got the size to be able to catch fades. He's got good focus, good hand strength, so you don't see a lot of focus drops from him. He's got sudden hands, so again, another guy that can last minute, doesn't tip the defensive back that the ball is on its way. But because of his size, he doesn't do great with comeback routes and those kind of quick routes where you got to sink your hips and drop your hips and come back real quick to shake the defender. So that limits his route tree. Can that develop? To an extent, but we've also seen guys like DK Metcalf where the offensive coordinators are like, yeah, you don't do this very well, so we're just not going to have you do it. He's a one-speed guy. He doesn't have that. He gets up to top speed early, and he doesn't have that second gear to pull away.
I'm also a one-speed guy.
Yeah, me too. Neutral.
Yeah.
That one of the challenges, though, because of that, it's easy for defensive backs to get on him, and so he has an unusually high number of contested catches. At 6'4", 215, he does okay with those. But honestly, who we kidding? While a contested catch may be great, we want our guys to be open when they're catching the ball.
Ideally,
Io Manor, another guy, 6 foot, 206. We both have him at 8. Good NFL size. He's got NFL speed, good work ethic, can make acrobatic catches, but he's got a tell coming out of his breaks. He tends to pop up, so defensive backs that do their homework will be able to break on the ball. He doesn't, you can tell he didn't play baseball when he was younger, doesn't track the ball, deep ball real well, needs to work on his catching technique because he did have a lot of drops, but he does have good size, and he's got that going for him.
That does help. So, I think we talked about the second round will, especially if Superflex, is probably going to be dominated by a lot of running backs, which seemed to be the case. I think by the time we were done in our mock draft, only 6 or maybe 7 receivers had gone in the first 2 rounds. And then, we saw a few more picks. I think Jaden Higgins went 212, I remember, which
that's the one I wish I'd have caught that he was still there. I'd have probably taken him at 205.
Well, and I think he was literally the 6th receiver, and everyone else went underneath that. Do you feel like that's still kind of where we're at, that a lot of these receivers are going to be end of second or beyond the top 5, who we figure will definitely go in the top 20 picks or 24 picks, that a lot of these guys are going to be late second and into the 3rd round of rookie drafts, even if they get 3rd or 4th round capital?
Yeah, it'll just be one of those things because we've fallen in love with this running back class. We're going to be taking shots on running backs in the 2nd round. We're going to be looking at draft capital, who's got a path to opportunity, who has an injured running back in front of him, what potential 3-down back did Washington draft, because they're talking they want a 3-down back and Brian Robinson ain't that guy. We're going to be looking for that opportunity for those running backs, and that will push down some of these receivers. It's such a crapshoot because the hit rate on them isn't great. So while it's great to fall in love with, I'm rebuilding, I'm going to rack up some draft picks, because the more shots you take, the better chance you have of hitting. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I suppose, the more shots you take, you get more guys, and are the odds of one of them hitting better? Yeah, but just because you have more draft picks and have drafted more guys, the percentage maybe isn't as good as if you, kind of gear up towards those top 16, 18 picks. I was listening to Garrett Price and Taylor Christensen. They did they've got a show they do called Roster Rescue, and they'll in real time, and Pete Bartowski, can't forget Pete, real time, they'll select somebody to send them their team. And so I sent you had to answer a trivia question And because I'm old and have been around a long time, I remembered Dynasty Matt referring to Andy Dalton as Andy Dolphin, and so they let me send my team in. And it's a team where I've got like 4 or 5 second round draft picks. And basically the consensus was, because of the hit rate, yeah, you've got some chances to take some shots on guys, but you'd be just as well served packaging all 4 of those picks and moving up to 108. Your opportunity to hit is going to be just as high or maybe even higher drafting at 108 versus taking 4 or 5 shots in the second round.
Yeah. Especially feels like this year maybe we'll get excited by some of the landing spots and some of the potential, but we shall see. Well, kind of a wrap up on receivers. We are going to be out until next Friday. We will not have a Tuesday or Monday show. We'll be out until Friday, and we are going to try to put together a current top 25 for Dynasty Superflex heading into the draft, and it'll be interesting because we will update and have our final 25 on the Monday after the NFL draft. So we'll see how much fluctuation there is. I'm glad I have some time to look at this because I feel like I move some people around every day. But Dennis, people have a long week while they're waiting to see which player on their favorite team is going to get arrested next. What can they use to fill that time?
Well, don't use some alcohol to numb your senses because your favorite player got arrested and then decide to go buy one more for the road. Just sit at home, pull out your device, go to your favorite podcast platform, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, like, subscribe, listen, rate, review.
I mean, it's also getting warmer. I've been taking, walks after work to try to get myself into a little bit better physical fitness level. I listen to a podcast while I'm wandering around for 30 minutes out there. It can be a great way to forget your troubles. So another way you can fill that time.
Are you like me and you listen to our podcast because you don't remember what you said because you're old, or you listen to somebody else's?
A lot of times for me, I will listen to one that I like about movies.
Okay.
And listen to them argue about movies that movies I've seen. So I always have to catch myself, though, if I'm listening to that or listening to football and walking around, because sometimes you'll hear something that either you want to cheer for or yell about, and you don't want to be that person wandering around in your neighborhood just yelling at the air.
I will say it is, because of the prevalence now of earbuds and podcasts and all that fun stuff and Bluetooth phones and whatnot, every time you see somebody by themselves talking, you have to ask yourself, crazy in a conversation? Yeah. Crazy or in a conversation?
I have my Beats earbuds, so sometimes I am actually talking. My wife has a knack for calling me when I'm out. She's like, "You sound out of breath." Yeah, I'm not in good shape. So
Diana Rossini just kind of posted, she said, though the news of the injury only broke today regarding Derek Carr, it appears as though the Saints have known about this recent shoulder issue for some time, and the brain trust evidently sprung a leak, and that's why we know about it now. Now the rest of the QB needy teams may have to leapfrog the Saints at number 9 as Carr's availability remains unknown.
Yeah, that's what they said. It sounded like today he could not play at all in 25. So maybe he and Deshaun Watson will start up their own fantasy football league somewhere.
I think Deshaun Watson's fantasy is a little less football oriented.
Supposedly he's gotten himself together, but you never know.
Took both hands.
On that cheery note, we will bid you farewell. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. We will see you back next Friday for top 25 Superflex prospects. Until then, have a wonderful